The story began on a calm morning far out over the open ocean, the sun rising slowly behind a thin layer of clouds. A small twin-engine aircraft, known among the local pilots as Shark, cut through the sky at a steady pace. The pilot, a man known for his calm nature and steady hands, had flown this route dozens of times. Today felt no different, at least in the beginning. He sat alone in the cockpit, the soft humming of the engines filling the cabin. The radio crackled lightly every now and then, just background noise to him. He checked his gauges, scanned the horizon, then leaned back slightly with a quiet breath. Flying gave him a peace he never found anywhere else. Up here, life always felt clear. But everything changed in a moment that arrived without warning. First, the right engine made a sound that didn't belong in the sky, something between a cough and a heavy thud. The pilot leaned forward, eyes narrowing, hand already moving toward the controls. Before he could process what he heard, the engine sputtered again, louder this time. The smooth rhythm of flight suddenly felt uneven, shaky, wrong. He stayed calm because that was what flying demanded. He ran through the checklist in his mind, adjusting power, checking fuel flow. He radioed in, giving a short update. His voice stayed steady, though a small knot formed in his stomach. But then came the second sound, sharper, deeper, and this time from the left engine. He knew instantly what that meant. Both engines. Both. He had trained for failures. Every pilot did. But training usually imagined one engine quitting, not two at the same time, not in the middle of the ocean with no land in sight and no nearby aircraft. For a moment, the sky fell silent. The engines didn't just weaken. They died. The humming disappeared, replaced by a hollow quiet that felt far louder than any alarm. The aircraft began to sink slightly, nose dipping as it lost power. The pilot took a slow breath. Panic couldn't help him. Clear thinking could. He radioed again, this time with urgency, but not fear. "Call sign Shark," he said, "experiencing dual engine failure. I'm preparing for a possible water landing." He waited for a response, but the radio crackled empty. Maybe the signal was weak, maybe he was too far out. He repeated the message anyway, hoping anyone would catch it. The aircraft glided now, moving only on momentum and the pilot's ability to control its slow descent. He adjusted the wings to catch the air better, buying time. Time to think, time to send one more call. The ocean below stretched endlessly, a huge blue mirror. Calm but unforgiving. He scanned the water for boats, for islands, for anything, but saw nothing. Just a wide open sea, sparkling in the morning light. In moments like this, a person becomes aware of every small thing. The bead of sweat on a brow, the faint vibration of controls, the way the sunlight hits the water. The pilot felt the weight of the responsibility, the aircraft, the equipment, his own life, and yet he kept breathing evenly. He tried restarting the right engine first. No response. Then the left. Still nothing. He knew the aircraft well. He knew when a machine was willing to fight back and when it wasn't. Today, it felt like the engines were gone for good. Still gliding, still losing altitude. He checked his instruments again. The numbers confirmed what he already felt. The aircraft was going down, and water was the only place to go. He pressed the radio button one more time. "Call sign Shark," he said firmly. "If anyone hears this, I am landing on water." He hoped the message would travel. Even if nobody answered, he hoped someone might later replay the recording and know where to look. He set the aircraft on the best glide path, trying to keep the nose just right. Not too low, not too high. Water landings were possible, even survivable if done with precision. He had trained for this maneuver years ago, though never imagined he would need it in real life, especially not alone. The ocean grew closer, waves becoming clearer, moving gently in long lines. He focused deeply. This was no longer flying. This was guiding a powerless aircraft toward a safe arrival, something between skill and instinct. He checked the cabin. Everything was secure. His life vest was within reach. The emergency beacon sat ready. At least he had equipment. At least he had practiced. The aircraft dipped again. The altimeter ticked lower. He talked to himself quietly, not out of fear, but to stay centered. "You've trained for this. Stay focused. Keep it level." The wings responded smoothly, the glide steady. The aircraft was doing everything it could, and he respected that. Machines had their limits, but they gave what they could. As the water neared, the pilot felt a strange calm settle over him. It wasn't peace exactly, but a sharpened clarity. Life squeezed itself into one task: land safely. Nothing else mattered. The sea waited below. The sky above watched silently. And the pilot, call sign Shark, prepared to touch down on the open ocean, still hoping that somewhere far away, someone finally heard him. The aircraft drifted closer to the ocean like a tired bird, losing height with every second. Yet inside the cockpit, the pilot stayed steady, guiding the powerless machine with quiet determination. The sky was still clear, but to him, everything felt heavier now. The world had narrowed down to the blue water under him and the silent controls in his hands. When the aircraft finally touched the surface, it wasn't violent. It was more like a long slide, first skimming, then slowing, then settling. The front of the aircraft dipped slightly, but the pilot corrected it smoothly. The moment the float stopped, there was only the soft sound of waves tapping against the fuselage. He had done it. A water landing with no engines, far from land, with no rescue in sight. He took a deep breath and allowed himself one small moment of relief. Not celebration, just acknowledgement. He had survived the first part. But the second part was beginning now, and he knew it would take patience. Inside the cabin, everything was quiet. No alarms, no vibration, no engine noise, just the soft rocking of the ocean. The aircraft felt strangely alive, as if it was breathing with the waves. He secured the emergency beacon and switched it on. A small light blinked. The device would send signals upward, hoping satellites or nearby aircraft might catch it. But signals could be delayed, sometimes hours, sometimes more. He checked for leaks. A little water seeped in, but not enough to panic. He had time. What he didn't have was certainty. His radio messages? Did anyone hear them? Did the call reach anyone? He replayed his last transmission in his head, clear, steady, short. He hoped it wasn't lost in the open air. He cracked open one of the side windows to let fresh air in. The ocean breeze brushed his face, warm, salty, strangely comforting. In the distance, the horizon looked endless, blending sky and sea into one line. It made him feel both small and strong at the same time. Minutes passed, then more. The aircraft rocked gently, sunlight shifting across the panels. He kept scanning the sky, turning slowly in his seat to look through the windows. Nothing. No boats, no distant lights, no shadows of aircraft. But he kept watching. Hope is quiet, but it doesn't go away easily. He reminded himself of something he learned long ago. A pilot. Allah's most powerful tool is not the aircraft. It starts the mind. If he stayed calm, he stayed alive. He opened a small emergency kit and took a sip of water. The ocean around him glittered like a huge mirror, but he avoided staring too long. Open water could make a person feel lost if they looked at it the wrong way. A gentle breeze pushed the aircraft slightly, rotating it toward the east. He didn't mind. It gave him a fresh angle to scan. Then he heard it. At first it was so faint he thought he imagined it. A low vibration, distant, uneven, almost swallowed by the sound of the waves. He held his breath and listened again. There it was, a thumping sound. Far away, but real. Not engines from a plane, not a boat, helicopters. His heart lifted, but he didn't move yet. Experience had taught him one thing. The presence of sound didn't always mean rescue was close. Yet he couldn't deny the sudden energy in his chest. He leaned slightly out of the window and looked up at the sky, squinting. Nothing visible yet, but the sound grew clearer, steady, rhythmic, unmistakably that of rotor blades cutting through air. Blackhawks. He didn't know how many. He didn't know where they were coming from. But the sound was growing stronger, and that alone meant hope. He grabbed a small reflective panel from the kit, something made to catch sunlight and flash signals toward rescuers. He positioned himself near the open window and waited for any sign of movement in the sky. The thumping sound grew louder, stronger, closer. Then, like small moving shadows, 2 helicopters appeared far in the distance, flying low over the ocean. They were still far, but the moment he saw them, the loneliness around him seemed to melt away. He felt the same relief a drowning person might feel when seeing a hand reaching out. He waved the reflective panel, catching sunlight and flicking it toward the aircraft, small flashes of bright light. The helicopters didn't change direction at first, but he kept signaling, steady and hopeful. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, one of the helicopters tilted slightly, turning toward him. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough. They had seen something. Maybe not clearly, maybe not perfectly, but enough to make them shift their path. The second helicopter adjusted too. They were coming toward him. He felt something warm rise in his chest. Not excitement, something deeper. The feeling of being found, of no longer being alone in an endless stretch of ocean. But he reminded himself to stay focused. Rescue was never simple. The ocean could shift, visibility could change, anything could interrupt communication. He continued signaling, flashing sunlight again and again. The helicopters drew closer, their sound now loud enough to vibrate through the cockpit walls. He watched them approach, each second making the image clearer. The dark shapes, the spinning rotors, the confident movement of trained crews searching the ocean. Help was arriving. He didn't know yet how they planned to reach him. He didn't know how long it would take, but he knew one thing clearly. His call sign shark, I'm landing on water, had reached someone. And now, the ocean didn't feel so endless anymore. The helicopters came closer, but not too close. Blackhawks never rushed into a rescue over open water without checking everything twice. They circled above the aircraft first, moving in slow, controlled arcs. Their shadows swept across the waves, sometimes passing over the floating aircraft, sometimes sliding away again. Inside the cockpit, the pilot watched them with a quiet hope. He didn't need to wave wildly or shout. He knew they couldn't to hear him over the rotors anyway. Instead, he stayed steady, holding the reflective panel in his hand, lifting it at just the right angle to catch sunlight and send a clean flash upward. For a moment, the ocean seemed to stop moving. Then, one of the helicopters lowered its altitude slightly. Not a rescue yet, but a sign. A sign they had confirmed an object on the water, a sign they were shifting from search to approach mode. The pilot felt the tension in his chest loosen just a little. He leaned back in his seat, taking a slow breath. He kept his mind clear, not letting excitement take over. Rescue missions were careful, step-by-step operations. The crews in those helicopters didn't just see a signal, they measured wind, checked the stability of the aircraft, estimated the best angle to reach him. Every move they made was calculated. He respected that. He had lived his own life by checklists and procedures. In a strange way, their carefulness made him feel safe. He watched as the lead helicopter positioned itself slightly ahead of the floating aircraft. The second helicopter stayed a bit higher, acting as support. The low helicopter's crew opened the side door, and he saw a figure leaning slightly outward, secured with a harness, scanning the water with trained eyes. That was when he realized he wasn't just being seen, he was being assessed. The aircraft floated upright, stable, but the ocean was slowly changing. Small ripples began to rise, and the waves looked taller than before. He knew that was the ocean's way, always shifting, never staying the same for long. The helicopter crew knew it too. The man in the doorway raised an arm, signaling something to the pilots inside. The helicopter adjusted again, taking a safer angle. They were preparing, but not rushing. The pilot inside the aircraft took a deep breath. He finally allowed himself to feel the weight of everything. The silence after the engine failure, the long glide down, the water landing, the waiting, the searching sky. Now, rescue was here, close enough to see clearly, but he also knew something important. Survival wasn't over yet. He quietly spoke out loud, not because anyone could hear him, but to keep his thoughts steady. Stay calm. Follow instructions. Don't make sudden moves. The ocean rocked the aircraft again, a little harder this time. He heard a soft creak from behind him. Nothing dangerous yet, but it reminded him that time mattered. Machines floating on water were patient, but not forever. He scanned the helicopter again. Someone inside lifted a signaling panel, reflecting light back at him. It wasn't random, it was intentional. They were communicating. A simple message: "We see you. We're working on it. Stay ready." The pilot nodded, even though they couldn't see him clearly inside the cockpit. He felt a growing sense of connection. A silent teamwork formed between him and people he had never met. The ocean wind shifted again. The aircraft rocked harder, tilting for a second before settling back. The pilot tightened his grip on the emergency kit. He wasn't afraid, but alert, fully present, ready. Then the helicopter made a slow pass over him, low enough for him to see the rescue crew preparing ropes and flotation gear. They were choosing the safest moment. He understood what they were planning. They wouldn't land. They wouldn't try to set the helicopter down. They would send a rescue swimmer into the water or lower a device he could grab onto. Either way, he would need to leave the aircraft eventually. He looked around the cockpit, at the worn controls, the panels, the seat where he had flown hundreds of hours. A strange feeling filled him. This aircraft had carried him through so much. Today, it carried him all the way to survival. Now, he would soon have to leave it behind. He placed one hand on the dashboard gently. It wasn't emotional, not in a dramatic way. Just a quiet thank you, the way a pilot acknowledges the machine that kept him alive. The helicopter circled again. This time it hovered a little lower, close enough that the wind from the rotors stirred the water into small white patterns. The pilot felt tiny droplets touch his face, blown inside through the open window. The sound of the rotors was louder now, filling the air with a deep, confident rhythm. He could see the rescue crew clearly, focused, calm, moving with practiced precision. One of them attached a line to a flotation device and signaled downward. This was it. The first stage of the rescue was beginning. The pilot braced himself gently as the ocean rocked the aircraft once more. The rescue line lowered slowly, shimmering slightly as it moved through the air. For the first time since the engines went silent, he felt something strong inside him. Not fear, not relief, but a deep, deep gratitude. Gratitude for training, for calmness, for the strangers in the sky who listened to a faint radio call. As the rescue line descended closer, inch by inch, he whispered quietly to himself, "You're going home. Stay steady." Outside, the Blackhawks hovered like guardians over the shifting sea. Inside, he prepared for the moment he would step out into the open water, trusting the rescuers who had found him in the vast, endless ocean. The rescue line touched the surface of the water with a soft ripple floating gently beside the aircraft. The pilot watched it for a moment, letting everything settle inside him. He knew what came next. He would need to leave the cockpit, step out onto the wing, and trust the sea beneath him and the rescuers above him. He opened the side window fully, letting the brighter light and crisp wind enter the cabin. The ocean breeze smelled clean, salt, sun, and something that reminded him of childhood trips near the shore. Strange how memories could appear even in moments like this. The helicopter above adjusted its position again, holding steady. The rescue crew leaned out slightly, watching him closely, ready for his next move. Though he couldn't hear their voices, he could feel their calmness. Their training carried a reassuring energy. He unbuckled his seatbelt slowly. The familiar click of the buckle felt different today, like closing the final page of a long chapter. Before leaving the cockpit, he took one last look around. The panels, the switches, the seat he knew so well. This aircraft had brought him all the way down safely, floating long enough for help to arrive. He wasn't saying goodbye to a machine. He was acknowledging something that had been part of his life for years. He pushed the emergency door open. Cool air rushed in, brushing against his face. He stepped carefully onto the wing. It wobbled slightly under his weight, but stayed firm enough. He crouched low, keeping his balance, his eyes shifting between the rescue line and the ocean. The sea was calm, but not still. Small waves rose and fell, tapping against the aircraft. The water didn't feel threatening. It felt alive, shifting, moving, reminding him he was a guest here. The rescue crew above signaled with hand gestures, guiding him step by step. Slowly he reached the flotation device, grabbing it firmly with both hands. The moment he held it, he felt a strange mix of vulnerability and safety. He was no longer connected to the aircraft. Now he was connected to them. Above, the helicopter lifted slightly, tightening the line. The pilot felt his body rise gently off the wing. The ocean dropped away beneath him as he hovered, swaying lightly. It wasn't frightening. It felt like being carried. He looked down once more at the aircraft. It sat quietly on the water, rocking softly. It looked smaller from up here, almost delicate. He whispered in his thoughts, "Thank you," then let go of the moment. The helicopter winched him slowly upward. The rotor wash grew stronger, whipping the surface of the ocean into white streaks. Droplets of water blew against his face as he rose higher, and soon he was close enough to see the rescue crew reaching out. Strong hands grabbed him, guiding him inside. The moment his feet touched the helicopter floor, a sense of relief washed through him. Not loud, not dramatic, just deep and quiet. One of the crew members gave him a reassuring nod, as if saying, "You're safe now." No long speeches, no dramatic words, just human understanding. And that was enough. He sat down, fastening the harness they handed him. The interior of the aircraft hummed with life. Equipment strapped to the walls, headsets, the faint smell of fuel and sea air. Every sound inside felt like the opposite of the silence he had been in earlier. The door closed. For the first time since the engines failed, he was no longer alone. The pilot of the Black Hawk made a smooth turn, circling the area once before heading back toward land. As they flew, the man looked through the window at the endless stretch of ocean. The sunlight danced on the waves, as if nothing unusual had happened there. Nature never paused, not for fear, not for danger, not even for miracles. One of the crew members sat beside him, offering a warm smile. "You did well," the crew member said simply. The pilot returned the smile. "I just followed the training." "That's what keeps people alive," the crew member replied. "Calm minds make good decisions." There wasn't much more to say. Some moments in life became meaningful without long explanations. The helicopter continued its steady path across the sky. With every mile, the feeling in the pilot's chest shifted, from relief to gratitude to something even deeper, perspective. Life had a way of reminding people what really mattered. Not engines, not equipment, not routines, but choices, calm moments, second chances. After some time, the coastline appeared in the distance. The sharp line between blue water and land grew clearer as they approached. Homes, fields, small roads, normal life returning to view. Funny how under normal circumstances these things seemed ordinary, but today they felt like treasures. The helicopter descended toward a small landing area, and when it finally touched the ground, he felt the vibration beneath him. Solid, steady, safe. The door opened. Fresh air flowed in again, but this time it smelled of land, not open ocean. He stepped out slowly, his legs adjusting after hours of tension. A few people waited nearby, officials, medics, and others ready to help. They didn't overwhelm him. They didn't rush him. They simply greeted him with soft nods and quiet voices, giving him time to breathe. He looked back at the Black Hawk that had carried him here. The rotors slowed, the thumping fading gently. The rescue crew stepped out behind him. He didn't know their names, but he would never forget them. One of them gave him a small thumbs up. He returned it. And in that small exchange lived the entire story. A pilot alone over the ocean. A call sign carried across the air. A water landing that should have been impossible. A signal that reached the right ears. And strangers who refused to stop searching. He survived not because of luck alone, but because people cared enough to answer a faint voice that said, "Call sign, Shark. I'm landing on water."